Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well. Welcome back to another AFL player trade review where I look at every single person that's moved clubs via trade or free agency and give you my take on what it means for the club they've left, the club they've landed at, and wrap it up for you from a fantasy and super coach and dream team perspective in 2024 and beyond. Talking about new Western Bulldog James Harmes. Before we see what it means for his club, we're going to talk about what it means for the Melbourne Demons. At time, he's been pretty important for the D's. I really go back to that premiership season of 2021 and his in and under work supporting that midfield group, and especially the defensive-minded, almost tagging style work that he did through the midfield was really important for the Melbourne Football Club. But over the past year to 2 years since that premiership, he's really not been as prolific in the team, and it's why the club were relatively happy to see him go for some pretty late draft capital, all things considering. He does have a really nice hard edge about him. He's a reasonable option inside forward 50, albeit more of a defensive-minded, and he does have a great attack on the ball as a midfielder. Not the greatest user, but really he has been at his best and most valuable to Melbourne previously, when he's played a negating and a defensive-focused role on contested animals for the opposition. It's what got him a premiership medal at Melbourne and where he's been at his best. However, over the past year to two, Melbourne, you've seen gradually through the opportunities and how they've chosen to structure up that Harmes has just not been a regular feature of their side. So while I think they'd happily have held him onto their list, I think it's a really nice movement for them. Frees up a little bit of salary cap for them. It seems like they're up to something, whether it be this year or next year, in terms of the salary they've got off their books. But it just gives some kids an opportunity. They've got a lot of really talented players on this list, predominantly key position, but they do have some nice midfielders building in the wings that either haven't given full opportunities yet, or that they just haven't get opportunities that are playing in the team and opportunities on ball. So for me, I quite like this move from a Melbourne perspective. It really forces them to keep giving opportunities to kids, while not really, in my eyes, affecting their opportunities at reclaiming another premiership in 2024. From the Western Bulldogs, I've got to be honest, this one's got me baffled a little bit. Let's look at their midfield. It's a relatively tight midfield three, but really expanded out to a midfield five that they had. It's Treloar, it's Liberatore, and it's Bontempelli. These are the three that are spending an incredible amount of time as the inside midfielders at stoppages and at centre bounces. And then it was Macrae and Bailey Smith that probably got the next most throughout the year. They did at times experiment with a couple of others, including Caleb Daniel, but they've got a really phenomenal elite five midfielders. Like, you put that five pound for pound against any other midfield five, throw in a Tim English, and it's a phenomenal group. Clearly, the attraction for Harmes was that if he's coming over to the Bulldogs, it's because they think he can add to that defensive-minded position through the midfield. They did lose a little bit this year with the departure of Josh Dunkley. While Dunkley's a really nice overhead, tall midfielder, the thing he brought best to the Dogs, and we saw it at Brisbane, bringing them through to within a kick of winning a grand final, was his ability to play defensive-minded while not losing offensive opportunities in the midfield. If they're looking at Harmes as a replacement to Dunkley, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I know that five of those midfielders I mentioned outside of Libba aren't massively focused on the defensive stuff, but Bontempelli is far from a one-way worker. We know Bailey Smith, while certainly happy to play forward of the ball, does have the defensive work rate, and so does Jackson Macrae to some extent. So I don't love it if he's coming into the midfield in what that means in totality for the Bulldogs midfield. I felt like while they've lacked at times in options through there, he was certainly not a disaster for them of how they've structured up that midfield. So if he's coming in, I am concerned what that means for others around, especially Smith and Macrae, who are already having limited times. And Treloar, I felt like he got back to his best at times this year and doesn't need to get experimented back off the halfback flank like he was towards some of 2022. I don't see him playing forward of the ball. They're already relatively well stocked for mediums to smalls through there, so I can't see him coming in through that place as a pressure forward. That's really not his game, and he's certainly not a dynamic X factor like a Cody Waitman. They seem to be interested in Watson, who is really a wizard small forward at the draft, if any of the media reports are there. So Harms, I don't really see how this all fits outside of him either just adding to depth, which makes no sense why he would seek a trade. So it's got to be the Bulldogs have sold him is there's a spot for you in our midfield. We need that defensive minded mindset in our midfield, and we think you can do that. That's got to be it. Otherwise, moving from one premiership contender to one that should be in the premiership window just as depth really doesn't make a lot of sense about why you would choose to do that. What does it mean for us in AFL Fantasy, Supercoach and Dream Team? Well, this could get interesting. He's listed as mid-forward in the 2023 season. I think that holds heading into a new year, and he's priced at an average of 46 and didn't play a dozen games this year. Just 2 years ago, that premiership season I mentioned of Melbourne, he averaged in the mid to low 80s across the formats in that role as a midfielder, playing some negating opposition focus while still trying to be impactful in the game around there. If he's got 40 points per game of growth as a mid forward, gosh, we're going to have to seriously look at this. Now, the thing about the Bulldogs midfield, though, is we can never have trust in that midfield. So is there some risk involved? Yes, of course. But that risk is going to be offset by two things. One, his price, and two, his ownership percentage. You're not paying for him as an 80s to go up into the hundreds. You're paying for him in the mid 40s. Can he go and get you 30 to 40 points per game of value? If that's the case, there's a big if here. He's a genuine watch list option for us. I think he's someone to seriously consider. Now, I don't love the move from a Bulldogs perspective, but if he gets into this midfield and if he plays that negating role, man, we've got potentially 40 points per game of proven scoring, and that's in a Melbourne outfit that's got some scoring capacity about it as well. So if he is priced at a 40s guy that can go and double what he delivers, okay, now we're talking about a guy, depending on how we structure our sides, an F4 and F5, that's got significant money to be made on his head while generating some scores for us. So I quite like this opportunity for the Bulldogs and for us as fantasy coaches if these variables all land. There is a world where he doesn't play much footy and is just depth only. That's absolutely a play, and it honestly wouldn't surprise me. Equally, I can see him getting plenty of opportunities early, and for fantasy coaches, if this role holds, this could be a really smart, astute selection in your starting squads. From Melbourne, he was depth there anyway. I don't see his departure having any compounding fantasy impacts outside of giving potentially a rookie a little leg up in the selection order. But do you agree or disagree on my take on James Harms? You can comment below and give me your thoughts. Every single player that moves clubs this off-season, I'll be reviewing here on YouTube. All you need to do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on. As soon as they move clubs and we upload the video, you'll be notified straight away. You can keep in touch with us across all social media, as well as on our Patreon, where you can get exclusive content for just a few dollars a month, in addition to what you're getting this trade period. And really season round, our Patreons get some incredible content and access. If you'd like to join that or follow us on social media, all the links are in the description of this video. I'll be back again soon with you with another player review of someone that's moved clubs this off season.